Hey everyone, it's Off the Clock with me, Steve, flying solo today. I haven't done one of these vlog shows solo in quite some time. In fact, it had been so long when I logged in to set this up, I didn't even have the Off the Clock branding downloaded on this computer to load up to the live stream. So I just threw up the H3HR branding, which is a pretty cool brand logo, by the way. But this is Off the Clock with Steve. Trish's out today. So it's just me, but I have some news I want to talk about today. I'm sure you heard this, right? On Monday, late on Monday, a federal judge struck down the CDC's federal mask mandate requirement for airplanes, airports, public transportation, et cetera, et cetera. It happened on Monday. In fact, it was so sudden, I even read that some planes that were in midair on Monday when the ruling got announced, pilots actually came on the intercom on the plane and said, "Hey, the mask mandate has been lifted, so feel free to take off your mask," like in mid-flight, which I think was kind of crazy, but that happened in a couple of instances. I actually flew yesterday. I had 2 flights yesterday, and it was spent a ton of time in airports because both the flights were delayed. And it was really weird and different, right? After 2+ years probably now of masking up for travel, to have that suddenly be optional was weird and different. And I would say probably, in my estimation, of the folks that I saw and the folks that were on the planes that I was on, maybe 30% of folks were still masked up and really hadn't changed what they were doing with masks compared to prior to that ruling being issued. But lots and lots of folks, particularly in the airport itself, just kind of walking through the terminals, lots and lots of folks unmasked. And even the flight attendants on certainly the second flight for sure were not masked either. I was on a Delta flights, and I know that I've read, and I've not talked to any of the flight attendants specifically, but I know that I've read the flight attendants themselves are actually pretty happy that this mandate has been lifted, just because they don't have to fight with passengers anymore about it. And we've seen so many stories about passengers just failing to comply or getting tired of it, especially in the latter days of the pandemic. So it was interesting. We'll see what happens. Hopefully we won't see a spike in cases, and we won't see lots of airline folks getting sick, and hopefully things will continue on. But it was really different and weird. And I mean, it was kind of nice, I will admit this, to not have to worry about it yesterday as I was traveling. So that was interesting. Today, Netflix, everyone uses Netflix, right? And maybe that's part of the problem Netflix is having. Netflix announced today, I believe, that they lost subscribers in the first quarter of 2022. It was the first time in the history of Netflix they had actually lost subscribers on a quarterly basis. And so what happens when companies issue bad news these days in a particularly volatile market? The stocks got hammered today. It's down 36% in one day. It's basically given up like a couple of years worth of run up in Netflix stock. And I thought about it when I heard the news this morning on the business news about Netflix. I'm like, boy, I don't really watch a ton of Netflix anymore either, I feel like. And I wonder if folks are just kind of burnt out on it, and so many other streaming services that are out there, particularly in niches. Like, I find I spend most of my time on things like ESPN Plus, right? So I can watch sports and watch German soccer and watch basketball, et cetera. And like, just those general purpose massive streamers, I don't know, like we'll see what happens, but 36% in one day is shocking. And I guess password sharing is another issue that apparently Netflix has got to figure out a way to crack down on, with folks just kind of handing out their passwords to friends and family members who don't live with them. And I guess that's technically not allowed either, but we'll see what happens. I still have Netflix, but I got to tell you, I've thought about getting rid of it myself. And that news today hasn't made me think any differently. A couple of other quick updates, just kind of worky stuff I'll mention since I have a minute. Over at the HR Tech Conference, hrtechconference.com, you can check that out. Of course, the conference is upcoming in Las Vegas in September, but we've also released the nomination process and the submission process for the top HR products of the year for 2022. So it's all there on hrtechconference.com. I definitely encourage you, if you're a software provider or you work for a software provider, or if you have a favorite software provider that you use, encourage them to submit their products, their new product innovations for top products of the year. We'll start doing demos fairly soon, and we'll probably do, I don't know, like 100 demos. Maybe that's a lot. I don't know. We're going to do a lot of demos throughout the summer to narrow down the list for top products of the year. It's a really popular thing. I know people have been asking me about it for a while, and so you can submit your top products there. Of course, a couple other things on the HR Happy Hour side. We did release a podcast today with our friend Nagaraj Nadenla from Oracle HCM. And it's all about great resignation and great attraction and talent. And Nagaraj is a great guy, really super smart. I've known Nagaraj. Wow, he's a software industry legend, kind of, right? To me, I've known him for over 10 plus years, and he's great on the show. It's a really interesting conversation. You can check that out, that release today. And then next week, Trish and I are joining with our friends at iSolved, iSolved HCM. Look at my iSolved hat right there. They're awesome people. We're doing a webinar next week on remote working and kind of trying to bust some myths. So we've got some cool approach to this webinar. It won't be just a normal, boring, read from the slides webinar. I promise you it's going to be really fun and exciting. We'll share out the link as well that you can sign up for that webinar. It's next week on April 28th. And so those are the announcements. One last thing, though. I had a call today, a little bit earlier today, as we were talking about some podcast stuff. And I can't release the whole thing yet, just because it's not completely locked down. But we are pretty close to booking a celebrity guest to come on the podcast. And I'm going to tell you what, I'm so excited when I heard this news today. Karen Steed, who's podcast producer extraordinaire and our business manager, is working really, really hard to lock this down. If we get this guest, and I think we're going to pretty soon-ish, it absolutely will be my favorite podcast for the year and maybe forever. I can't say who. I'll just tease it with hashtag Bachelor Nation. If you watched the show or talked to me in the last 6 months or so, you know how much I was into The Bachelor this year. And I'm a proud card-carrying member of Bachelor Nation. And I'm super excited that we have this guest hopefully coming up really, really soon. And I can't wait. So last thing, I thought I'd start a new series, and Trish isn't here, so I can't run it by her, but I thought I'd try it. Like, I read a lot, try to make notes for this show, try to come up with ideas. I've got all these cards, I'm writing down notes. So I thought we would do kind of strange mainstream headline of the day. Maybe it's odd, maybe it's funny, but it's an actual headline. I'm not making this up, and it's not some weird, bizarre website or something that no one's ever heard of. Like, just kind of a mainstream one. I don't know that I'll have one every show, but I do have one today. I'm just going to read it. This is a headline ripped from the news today on Wired.com. Wired.com. Here it is. Scientists want to probe Uranus with a new spacecraft. That's it. That's the headline. So hope that was fun and funny, or both, maybe. Reminder, please, you can find all the show archives for the Happy Hour show, the At Work in America podcast, the Workplace Minute show, which runs on your Amazon Alexa device. Add that skill to your Alexa. Get a couple of minutes of me a couple times a week talking about headlines. Different headlines than the Uranus headline, I promise you. They're really work stuff, and it's a really fun show as well. So check out all the show archives at hrhappyhour.net. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for a few minutes today. Trish and I will be back on Friday, I promise, and the show will be much better Friday. Definitely. Only way to go is up. So thanks so much for listening. We'll see you on Friday.